It's really hard to comprehend it because in 15 years, it's hard to comprehend that happening, you know.
No one expected this. What started as a simple preservation project at Graceland has turned into one of the most shocking revelations in music history. Beneath Elvis Presley's tomb, experts uncovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about the king. Not a rumor. From secret chambers to shocking journal entries, the world is now facing a side of Elvis we were never meant to find. Join us as we unveil the details of this mystery buried in Graceland. Something strange beneath Graceland.
Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing.
No one expected that kind of sound. Workers were just doing a simple job, fixing the ground around Elvis Presley's meditation garden. Everything was going fine until their equipment hit something solid. And it wasn't rock or pipe, it was metal. And not just any metal. This was something old, sealed shut, and buried deep in the earth right under Elvis Presley's grave. Initially, the crew suspected it might be an old pipe from decades past. But when they cleared the dirt, what they found was shocking. It was a round iron hatch, locked with bolts and covered in rust. The kind of thing that wasn't supposed to be there. Immediately, the Graceland team stopped all work. They didn't take any chances. Experts were called in. Historians, engineers, and even spiritual researchers. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't part of the original garden plans. Then came the big moment. They opened the hatch, and what they saw took everyone by surprise. Under the garden was a stone staircase, narrow and long, going 30 feet underground. The deeper they went, the colder and quieter it got. No sounds, no insects, just still air that hadn't moved in years. At the bottom, they found a room. And it wasn't just a room, it looked like a secret chapel. Stone walls, candle holders, and a simple wooden cross leaning in the corner. In the middle was an altar. Sitting right on top of it was a thick, leather-bound journal. Dust covered everything, but somehow the book looked like it had been waiting. When the experts opened it, they couldn't believe their eyes. The handwriting was real. It was Elvis Presley's. This wasn't just a notebook. It was a personal journal, filled with thoughts, feelings, and moments from his private life, pages that no one had ever seen before. One line stood out. "I come down here when the noise gets too loud, when the world drowns out the voice of God. Down here I remember who I am." That sentence hit hard. Elvis didn't just build this space to hide. He built it to feel something real, something peaceful. Turns out this secret chapel was never listed in any blueprints. It was probably added during a renovation in the late 60s. Only a few people must have known it existed. Maybe his close friends, maybe no one. One thing was clear. Elvis wanted this space to stay hidden. But the big question is, why? Why build a hidden chapel under your own grave? Why write all this down and lock it away? Soon, the Graceland Foundation went live with a press briefing. They confirmed the discovery. Yes, the room was real. Yes, the journal was authentic. And yes, this was something the world had never seen before. As experts read more of the journal, they noticed a darker tone in certain parts. Not everything was peaceful prayers. There were signs of stress and even fear. One sentence in particular gave everyone chills. "They told me this place would never be found, but I feel it. Eyes, always eyes. If you're reading this, then maybe they found me too." What? That part caught everyone off guard. What eyes? Who were they? What was he talking about? The journal suddenly didn't just feel spiritual, it felt like a warning. Like Elvis was trying to say something he couldn't say out loud. And then came the photo. Fixed into the back of the book was a faded Polaroid. In it, Elvis sat at the altar, eyes closed, hands together like he was praying. The picture was quiet, soft until you looked behind him. There was a figure in the corner. It was dark, unclear, and hard to describe, but it didn't look like a person. Not exactly. Experts studied the image. It wasn't a camera trick. It wasn't a reflection. No one could say for sure what it was. Some said it looked like a shadow of a man. Others said it was not quite human. Whatever it was, it added more mystery to the already shocking discovery. And it raised new questions. Was this place just for peace? Or was Elvis hiding from something? Did he know something no one else did? People started to wonder if Graceland held more than just memories. Maybe Elvis had built something deeper, something that reflected his true self, his fears, his faith, and maybe even his secrets. The experts were careful not to jump to conclusions, but they all agreed on one thing. This wasn't just a random room. This was planned. It was meant to be found. Or maybe it wasn't, but it had meaning. One line near the end of the journal hit especially hard. Behind the stone and the song lies the memory they told me to forget. Just like the others, that line also made researchers stop. It sounded like Elvis was told to hide something important. And somehow this hidden chamber was his way of keeping that memory safe. At this point, it was quite obvious that the man people once loved wasn't just a music icon. He was someone carrying deep thoughts, spiritual questions, and maybe a message no one was ready to hear. One thing became very clear. This was no longer just about Elvis Presley's grave. This was something bigger. And just when people thought they had seen it all, another clue surfaced. Behind the walls, beneath the stars. The mystery didn't stop at the hidden chapel. It was just the beginning. Once the experts confirmed Elvis Presley had a secret room under his grave, people started asking the obvious question. Was that the only one? Turns out it wasn't. While sorting through Graceland's oldest maps and records, a few preservation staff members noticed something strange. In one of the mansion's northeast wings, a room marked storage looked larger on paper than in real life. This area had always been off-limits to visitors. It was filled with furniture, boxes, and years of old decorations. But behind one wall, something was off. A light tap on the surface gave it away. It was hollow. They cleared the wall and found it had been covered with drywall and posters from past Elvis events. Hidden behind it was a sealed door. No handle, no knob, just an outline. With care, they opened it. What they found was shocking. Again, behind that door was a narrow hallway, not more than 5 feet wide, stretching deep behind the walls of Graceland. The air was cold again, thick, old. It didn't feel like just a hallway, it felt like stepping into a different time. At the end of it stood a stone archway leading into another hidden chamber. This one looked similar to the one beneath the tomb. It had candle holders on the walls and symbols carved into the stone. But it wasn't dusty. It looked like no one had ever entered it, clean, quiet, and untouched. And right in the middle of the room was a glass box. Inside it was a golden cross, simple and small, with a tiny green gem at its center. Lying beside it was a tape recorder and another journal. Yes, another one. The new journal was thinner and older. The first page was written in Elvis's handwriting again. It said, "This is not for the fans, this is not for the cameras, this is my reckoning." This line hit everyone in the gut. It didn't sound like someone talking to the world. It sounded like someone talking to himself, or maybe to something bigger. The press called it the second secret room. And once again, the reaction was huge. People weren't looking for gossip. They were searching for meaning. And the Graceland team had to admit that this second discovery wasn't some strange mistake. These rooms had been part of Graceland all along. Elvis had them built for a reason. They were designed to stay hidden. And yet here they were, revealing a completely different side of him that the world had never seen before. Inside the second journal, one page stood out. It was dated October 9th, 1975. "They will come looking. If they find this, they are already too late. There's more, not here, deeper." That last word, deeper, set off alarm bells. What did it mean? Was he pointing to another chamber? Was there something even further underground, or was it symbolic? No one could say for sure. But one thing was certain. This was no mistake. Elvis had left a trail. Some kind of path through Graceland's hidden spaces, with journals, symbols, and quiet warnings along the way. And this wasn't the end of it. Next to the journal was that strange golden cross. At first glance, it looked like simple jewelry. But when the experts ran tests on it, something odd came up. The small emerald in the middle gave off a low magnetic field, something scientists still can't explain. It wasn't harmful, but it was weird, like it had energy. Also strange, the shape of the room, The walls weren't just built for style. They matched the layout of certain old spiritual designs, things found in ancient temples and meditation chambers. Circles, stars, and lines pointing toward the sun. In short, this place wasn't thrown together. It had meaning, purpose, and maybe that was the point all along. When the second discovery was confirmed to the public, something changed. Even the skeptics, the people who always brushed off Elvis theories, started paying attention. Historians said they'd never seen anything like it, not just because of the rooms, but because of the message. Elvis wasn't just a man searching for peace. He seemed to be building a story made of stone, hidden deep in the house everyone thought they already knew. Now the question became bigger. What was he trying to say? People who'd studied Elvis for years started digging through old interviews, tour videos, and letters. They noticed things they'd missed before: quiet phrases he used, symbols he wore, books he read in private. One expert pointed out that Elvis had always been interested in spiritual topics. He read books about the afterlife, aliens, the Bible, and energy. People thought it was just a hobby, but maybe he was preparing something. And let's be honest, this wasn't just any star. This was Elvis Presley. If anyone had the power, money, and mystery to pull off something like this, it was him. A few TV reporters started calling it Elvis's secret map. Not a map with directions, but a spiritual one. A map made of rooms, symbols, writings, and maybe even hidden messages in his songs. One of the experts who discovered the chamber said, "This isn't just a home. Graceland is a puzzle. We've only solved the first piece." And that line stuck. Graceland was no longer just a tourist stop. It had become something else, a mystery wrapped in music, faith, and the thoughts of a man who had more to say. So what's next? That's what everyone wanted to know. More people started visiting Graceland, not just to look at Elvis's old car or jumpsuits, but to feel something real. Fans came to pray. Some came to cry. Others just stood quietly staring at the garden that now held so many secrets. The second chamber changed everything, but one thing was still bothering the experts. That word in the journal, deeper. Was it just a feeling, or was Elvis trying to tell the world that something else is still waiting? Elvis's other side, what the world never saw. After the shock of the hidden rooms at Graceland, people couldn't stop asking one question. Why would Elvis build something like this? It was a fair question and a hard one to answer. To understand it, people had to look beyond the man on stage. Not the jumpsuits, the crowds, or the flashing lights, but the quiet Elvis. The man who stayed up at night reading strange books. The one who kept his real thoughts to himself. And that's Elvis? He was someone most fans never truly knew. Elvis Presley wasn't just about music and fame. Underneath it all, he had deep questions about life, passing, and what happens afterward. He collected books about spiritual journeys, secret knowledge, and even reincarnation. His private library was filled with titles about numerology, meditation, and ancient beliefs. That's right, the king of rock and roll also studied cosmic energy. One room inside Graceland was a mini library for these ideas. Hundreds of books stacked on shelves. Some were about angels, some were about hidden forces in the universe, some things about how sound and vibration affect the soul. This wasn't some random phase. He lived it. He often quoted spiritual writers during private conversations. He even talked about feeling like he had a bigger mission, something that went beyond concerts and gold records. It's clear now, Elvis was on a journey, not just through life, but through the unknown. And maybe that's what the hidden chambers were all about. When experts started examining the room beneath his tomb more closely, they saw something interesting. The way it was built followed certain ancient designs. Circles carved into the floor, wall patterns shaped like stars and suns. The position of the altar even lined up with sunrise on certain days. One historian said, "These are signs you find in sacred places, not celebrity homes." The deeper they looked, the more the room seemed to reflect both religious and spiritual ideas. Some symbols were Christian. Others were drawn from Eastern traditions. It was like Elvis had created his belief system as a mix of everything he connected with. Even the items left behind in the chambers added to the puzzle. The carved wooden chair found in the second room had strange shapes on its back. Some matched symbols were found in very old spiritual texts. The golden pendant with the emerald gave off an electromagnetic reading. That's not typical jewelry. And then there were his words. In one journal entry, Elvis wrote, "You'll find me where the stones hum." That line became the topic of debate. Some thought it was poetry. Others believed it was literal, that certain stones in the chamber gave off energy. Scientists tested the walls. They found no obvious hums, but one small section did respond to sound differently. It echoed in a softer, almost musical way. Strange? Definitely. By this point, it was no longer just fans paying attention. Professors, religious leaders, and even musicians began weighing in. What had Elvis discovered? What was he trying to say? A few said this could change how we view him completely. Maybe he wasn't just a performer. Maybe he was also a kind of spiritual explorer. Someone who used music as a way to reach people, but who was searching for something much deeper when he was alone. And if that's true, then Graceland is more than just a house, it's a message. The news reached places far beyond the United States. In Europe and Asia, people started revisiting his old interviews. In one from 1972, he was asked about fame. His answer now feels like a clue. "Fame is just noise," he said. "What I want is peace." Back then, it didn't get much attention. But today, that sentence hits differently. Because peace is exactly what those hidden rooms feel like, quiet, calm, away from the world. And still, that one word from his journal keeps showing up. Deeper. No one's sure if it means a literal room that hasn't been found yet or something else, a deeper message, a warning, a belief. Nobody can say for sure, but teams haven't stopped searching. They've started scanning the land under Graceland with advanced tools. So far, no third chamber has been confirmed. But honestly, at this point, anything feels possible. Back at Graceland, the mood has changed. The property once felt like a museum. Now it feels like a place of discovery. Guests walk more slowly. They don't just come to see Elvis's cars or guitars. They pause at the meditation garden, they whisper, some cry, and some leave letters by the gate. Even music experts have changed how they speak about Elvis's work. They're looking at his songs in a new way, wondering if lyrics that once sounded romantic might have had hidden meanings, like in his performance of Bridge Over Troubled Water. The way he sings it, the raw emotion, it doesn't sound like a stage act. It sounds like someone carrying something heavy, someone trying to reach out. And maybe that's what he was always doing, trying to reach someone. As news of the hidden journals and spiritual items kept spreading, more people began sharing their own Elvis stories. Old bandmates talked about times when he would stop mid-rehearsal to pray. Others remembered how he'd give away Bibles to strangers. There was even a story about him visiting a monastery quietly just to sit in silence. These weren't publicity stunts. There were no cameras, no interviews, just Elvis looking for something real. And now that the world has seen this other side of him, things won't be the same. The king of rock and roll might have been hiding something much more powerful than his fame. He might have been hiding his heart. And Graceland? It might be more than his home. It might be his final message, or just the beginning of one. Because while many thought his tomb was the end of the story, some now believe it's only the middle. Soon, what started as a surprising find beneath a tomb had turned into a quiet movement. For years, Elvis was seen as the superstar who passed on too young. Now, people were beginning to understand that he may have lived with more depth than anyone had realized. And then came the big reveal, an announcement that pulled everyone in again. It turned out there were old tapes, not concert recordings, not outtakes from the studio. These were private, hidden, tucked away in the lower parts of Graceland, never released, never leaked, and they had a name, the Return Sessions. That's what the label said on one of the boxes. When experts played them, they couldn't believe their ears. The voice was clearly Elvis's, but it was different, not the polished voice from Vegas stages or radio hits. It was tiring, raw, and emotional. In one tape, he simply talks, no music, no echo, just Elvis, along with a microphone. His voice is low. "If this all ends, I hope someone hears this," he says. "There's more to me than they know. Maybe someday they'll find it, maybe not. But if they do, just know it wasn't for nothing." It was like Elvis had been speaking across time. Not to sell records, not to win fans, but to finally be understood. Many of the recordings in the return sessions included quiet humming, soft piano notes, and long pauses. It sounded like he was thinking out loud, using music not as entertainment but as prayer. Some of the lyrics were never finished. Some were just phrases, repeated like mantras. The light, the light, the light is waiting. That line showed up more than once, in different melodies, different tones, but always the same words, as if he were trying to remind himself of something or remind us. And people listened. For the first time, Elvis fans weren't just talking about favorite songs or favorite performances. They were talking about his thoughts, his beliefs, and his fears. This was new territory, and honestly, it felt right. For too long, Elvis had been trapped in the image people created for him, the icon, the legend, the jumpsuit. But that wasn't the full story, not even close. He had tried to show pieces of his true self. In his gospel records, in those rare moments on stage when he'd close his eyes and lose himself in a song, in the way he held to his Bible during hard times. But now, through the journals, the secret rooms, and the tapes, his voice was finally cutting through the noise. And that's when Graceland made another big move. The team in charge of preserving the estate announced they were building a brand new section. It wouldn't be just another display of clothes or trophies. It would be a spiritual wing, a quiet place for reflection. The space would feature the journals found in the chambers, clips from the return sessions, and exhibits about Elvis's spiritual journey. It would be peaceful, filled with light, with music softly playing in the background. And just like that, Graceland was no longer a tourist attraction. It was becoming something else, something sacred. People started coming from all over the world, not for selfies or souvenirs, but to stand still and think. Many brought flowers, some left candles, others sat on the grass for hours just listening to his music with new ears. It was a powerful shift. Even reporters, usually quick to move on, stayed longer. Their tone changed. They stopped asking if the hidden rooms were real. That was already confirmed. Now they were asking what it meant. What kind of man builds secret rooms with prayer symbols beneath his own grave? Why did he write those words? Why did he leave a trail? The more they dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. It was a pattern, a message, a kind of goodbye letter to the world left in puzzle pieces scattered around Graceland. And the most beautiful part? People cared. Deeply. He wasn't just a voice anymore. He was a seeker, a thinker, a human being trying to make sense of the world just like the rest of us. And slowly everything about his legacy began to feel more personal, more real. One woman said, "I came to see the man who made rock and roll. I found the man who was looking for God." That kind of thing, you don't forget it. Even the music started sounding different. People who had heard "How Great Thou Art" 100 times were now hearing it as a prayer. When he sang, "You'll Never Walk Alone," it wasn't just comfort, it was truth. It was he, reminding us that even when he felt alone, he kept singing. For us, for something greater, and maybe for this very moment, because now the world was finally listening with their hearts, not just their ears. And that's something Elvis might have always hoped for. The echo that never fades. After all the discoveries, tapes, and global reactions, something unexpected happened. The noise faded, but the meaning stayed. Graceland didn't feel like a museum anymore. It felt alive, like a living message still unfolding, one that Elvis had started writing long before anyone realized. People weren't just talking about the secret rooms beneath the tomb anymore. They were talking about what those rooms stood for, about what he believed, about what he was possibly trying to leave behind, not just for fans, not even for his family, for the world. And it started to hit people in different ways. Some visitors to Graceland came for comfort, others came out of curiosity. But many arrived with quiet tears, holding old records or handwritten letters, placing them by the gates like gifts. Not because Elvis was gone, but because in some strange way they finally felt like they knew him, the man behind the microphone, the voice behind the legend. There were no more flashy headlines, just deep conversations. A small child asked his mother, "Was Elvis a singer or a priest?" The mother paused before answering, "Maybe both." It was hard to explain now. Elvis didn't fit neatly in one box anymore. Not just a rock star, not just a movie icon, and not just a cultural wave. He had become something else entirely, something felt more than seen. At the meditation garden, someone placed a single sign: "He still sings." And honestly, that felt true. Because even after all this time, people were hearing his songs differently. They sounded like notes from a soul reaching out not just to entertain, but to connect. In the new spiritual wing built inside Graceland, fans walked through exhibits filled with his thoughts, not just his fame. There were pieces of paper with his handwriting where he had written things like, "Truth is a whisper louder than applause. They told me I was the king. I wanted to be a servant. Music is a mirror. I sang to see myself." Simple words, but powerful, more powerful than any gold record. There's no doubt that he was singing for something bigger. Maybe that's what made the recent discoveries so emotional. Not because they were shocking or strange, but because they proved he wasn't pretending. The secret rooms, the journals, the spiritual symbols, they weren't fiction. They were him. Every quiet detail was a piece of his truth, and now the world finally believed him. Some scholars started calling Graceland a spiritual archive. Others referred to it as America's soul sanctuary. The feeling around Elvis's legacy had changed forever. But what about the word he left behind in one of his last writings? Deeper. That single word had started so much speculation. What else could be down there? Another room, another recording, a final letter? Searches continued, but nothing new had been confirmed. Still, the word stays, not as a clue, but as a challenge. It wasn't about another secret room, it was about remembering that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't physical, they're emotional, internal. And maybe that's what Elvis was leading people toward all along. Because everything he left behind, the hidden altar, the strange pendant, the whispering journal entries, weren't warnings or puzzles. They were reflections. His way of saying, "I was more than what you saw." And now the world sees it, they feel it, they believe it. And now, all these years later, we're finally ready to listen. Graceland remains the center of this quiet revival. But it's not just about a place anymore. It's a shared understanding that Elvis left more than music behind. He left a part of himself. And even though he's not here to explain every symbol or every line in his journals, one truth remains clear. He wanted to be heard. Not as a king, not as a star, but as a man trying to find peace. And maybe he finally did. What are your best memories of Elvis Presley? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.